Business owner director. So today is going to be a little video on HMRC, and we're going to go a little bit more in depth to essentially financially distressed businesses that encounter HMRC problems, and what you can do as a director to prevent them and ultimately prevent further action. And I'm going to split it into sort of 5 key areas. The first is going to be what happens if you ignore HMRC debt. The second is, can HMRC close your company? The third will explain when a time to pay arrangement is viable and how good they can be. Number 4 is options if you can't pay HMRC or they refuse a time to pay arrangement. And point number 5 is how we can help at the Directors Helpline. So HMRC in the current environment is probably a thorn in everyone's side. Whether you're in hospitality, retail, manufacturing, loads of other sectors, HMRC is usually a key problem for cash flow. So hospitality, for instance, have huge issues with the VAT and obviously the ups and downs of their cash flow and just seasonality of hospitality. The problem you have with HMRC is they're not a commercial entity. They are tax collectors. So with outstanding amounts, they wouldn't think normally and logically of, like, if I work with this business, I might get the money back for the taxpayer. They have one rule of a remit, and that if you fall outside that, they'll have a certain protocol of the enforcement that they will take, which in a way is quite unpredictable. And they will go about it with absolutely zero emotion, which I know doesn't help. The problem you have is not only they're not a commercial entity, but the people you speak to on the other end of the phone, unfortunately, have never run a business. So they don't think how you would think. They've never had those pressures of cash flows. They are there to do a job, to get that money back. And if you can't do that, they will do this. So if you ignore HMRC, unfortunately, what happens is you'll just go into the next section of enforcement, and that might be a field officer. It might be straight to looking at winding up petitions. So communication with them is absolutely key, even if it's not what they want to hear, because they would rather you tell them that what's happening and disclose than ignore. Even if it's to the sense of, I'm looking to take formal advice. They ethically have to give you time. So it might sound counterproductive, but actually calling them and telling them that I'm not ignoring it, I'm taking some professional advice here, is what they want to hear. And it will buy you critical time. If you ignore them, it will just go through a process, and eventually they will instigate action, which will obviously limit your options and essentially take it out of your hands. So the other key thing is, obviously, if you're ignoring them and you've got an outstanding debt, the interest and fines will continue at a rate on a daily basis. So sometimes if it's a principal amount and it's quite large, the interest and the fines, if you're ignoring it, will become such a degree that actually it becomes an insurmountable amount of money to repay back in any short period of time. So don't ignore. It's like most things in life, you know, as sensitive and as delicate as it is, communication is key. And whether that's ringing us to give you a bit of guidance and reassurance for us to help you, or communicating with HMRC directly, pick up the phone to them. Now, can HMRC close your company? 100% yes, they can. And again, they still remain the most aggressive creditor. And again, that goes back to what I was saying before about they're not a commercial entity, they are tax collectors, and if you can't pay it, they will take an enforcement action. So HMRC are by far the largest creditor in winding up petitions, and that's when the issue is stat demand. They'll give you a certain amount of time to pay, and if you can't, it will then have a hearing in court. If you do not defend that, adjourn it, or pay it, then the company will be wound up. So yes, they can, and it's regardless of any sector you're in. They will do it with pretty much zero emotion. So it's key that before you get to the stage that enforcement action is pending or going ahead, you communicate, you get a strategy, speak to us, and we'll obviously help you formulate that. And how to avoid reaching it to that stage is, again, not ignoring the problem. You know, a lot of the times people getting HMRC arrears through no fault of your own, through almost sort of events beyond your control. It doesn't mean you've got a bad business. It doesn't mean you haven't got a future. It doesn't mean it's a failure. If anything, a lot of times the business is viable, but the company might be under a lot of pressure. But if you don't deal with that, then it can affect the business, obviously. Obviously, time to pay arrangements is the default place where people ring up HMRC. I've got a debt. Can I pay it back over an agreed period of time? Now, it's worth mentioning that a time to pay arrangement that someone on the other end of the phone can agree is different depending on who you speak to and the local area. But the three sort of things to really understand on a time to pay and the advantages and disadvantages of them is, one advantage is it is informal, okay? So it's confidential between you and HMRC. So it's not in the public domain, it's a private arrangement between you and your creditor. So that's a real good thing about time to pay. And I always think that time to pay is come into their own if it's a short-term problem and someone's not paid me, I've got to pay this VAT, or we understand where the cash flow issue has come from. We just need, a bit of a breathing space on the cash flow. So anything sort of 0 to 12 months, I'd always say, ring them yourself. You don't need to employ or engage a third-party service, and they should be more than accommodating to do a time to pay on those terms. But a disadvantage of it is they'll continue to add the interest and fines. It sounds illogical, it sounds sort of counterproductive, but HMRC will continue to add interest and fines on the principal amount, even in a time to pay. So it's quite hard to get that. So dependent on that amount would depend on if that's a viable route for you. Another disadvantage is, as it's an informal, so it's confidential, it can be subject to change. Now, it's unusual, they usually put it in writing, and as long as you adhere to it, it's fine. But one of the key conditions on a time to pay arrangement would be future liabilities are maintained and paid as and when they fall due. So please don't fall into that unsuspecting trap of agreeing something because you feel like you've just got to agree something with HMRC that will mean that future filings or future payments will be missed and have to fall into a time to pay because it'll immediately default. So one of the key things that HMRC look at is compliance. Have you filed correctly? Are you up to date with your filings and communications? If you've had a rocky compliance history, they're less likely to agree anything going forward. But it's really key that you put forward what you can afford to pay rather than what they're dictating you to pay. But certainly don't look, if they're putting so much pressure on you, don't just go and get a loan to pay debt with debt, because all you do is it's a short-term fix, but then a longer-term problem. You've then got to service that debt, and that debt usually would be exposing you under personal guarantees and all these other things that come into play. There is other options available, but time to pay arrangements can be a real good thing. If dependent on the complexity, we have people on our panel that are just specialising in time to pays. We do a lot of in-house as well, and we have communication with HMRC at different levels. So, there's high debt teams, there's low debt teams. So if we do need longer time to pays over, let's say 2-3 years, and there's more issues around the company, and it could be asset rich but cash poor, for instance, then that's where you would reach out to us and we can have those conversations. So they are a good tool in a lot of times and a lot of circumstances. Is there options if you can't pay HMRC? Well, obviously, you can look at do we refinance the company? Do we leverage against our assets? Do we look at a more formal rescue option where we do a formal agreement with our creditors, namely HMRC? Or do we look at restructuring? When you're in financial distress, there is no right or wrong route, okay? There's just different routes have different pros and cons. In a perfect world, you wouldn't be in it. But if you are in that situation, the sooner you can get a control and a plan, the sooner the stress will go and you'll feel more able to deal with it, essentially. It's not nice speaking to HMRC. It's not nice receiving the brown letters or an enforcement officer turning up. However, as soon as you've got a plan, you're in control of it, things will become a lot more easier and light, because where your focus needs to be is running the business. So there's lots and lots of different options, and it's not up to us to tell you which option to go for. Our job is merely to articulate each option in a way that you understand to make a decision of what's right for you, your business, and you personally. And whatever route you go down, we support you on that route. It's not up to us to judge or tell you right or wrong. You do what you're comfortable with. And if that's refinancing and taking a loan out, great. As long as you know the pros and cons of doing that, that's our job done. And I think that sort of goes into how we can help. You know, we are a free service. The whole ethos of the Directors Helpline was to support directors who get into financial difficulty. My background of insolvency and restructuring, you know, I've seen it from that side, where 95% of all businesses that go insolvent, weird enough, could have been prevented. And that's the frustration. If you'd had the right support, insolvency doesn't happen overnight. It's a series of events and triggers that lead to a point. The whole ethos of the Directors Helpline is to prevent that and support you on that journey, however little or as much you want us to get involved. You know, our 4 key values is, number 1 is we're approachable. We have to have a sort of ways to communicate that you can feel you can approach us with no judgment and no sort of incentive to take you down one route or another. Our second value is transparency. You know, we're not a charity, but our financial model is very, very clear of how we get paid, and we're a totally free service to you. So it makes no difference to us what you do in the outcome. Our job is to support you. Our third is to be 100% director focus. Everything we do is for you, around you. And our fourth, which is probably a big key one, is to add value. I wouldn't be doing this if we didn't add value to you as a director, to you to run your company and help you support your business. And hopefully, you know, the thousands of people we speak to on a monthly basis and have helped in the past are testament to that, and one of the reasons we keep going and doing what we're doing. So we're on your side, we're in your corner, we are the Directors Helpline.